it's interesting to start a series with the premise of the relation between art and architecture, simply probably because of the recent popularity of those so-called architectural references shows, or those architectural sculptures exhibitions, and somehow quite often based on only very superficial similarities, on a series of notions, as Barbara said, of styles, that is simply of superficial appearances, which somehow have very often reduced architecture to a phenomena of decoration, whether it is an interior decoration or an exterior decoration, nevertheless something which was a very superficial approach, and ultimately I do not want to enter a sort of rather now standard and conventional attack on either the superficiality of postmodernism or the boring, stiff, and rather unadventurous approach that the modernists presented us, because ultimately, again, in the recent period, that focus on the notion of image, the notion of style, has perhaps taken us away from certain phenomena that are specific to architecture, but also perhaps common to sensibilities which you can find in other fields, not only in art, but in literature, in the cinema, in a series of 20th century activities which are somehow perhaps more relevant to the problem that architecture is facing than the simple imitation of 18th or 19th century vocabulary of pictures and whatever facades. And somehow what I want to discuss tonight is obviously, yes, related to a particular attitude, which is my own work, but my own work is after all nothing but a reflection or a criticism of a particular situation, and somehow an attempt to look at architecture not as a knowledge of form, but rather as a form of knowledge. That is, to use architecture just as writers use literature, movie makers use the cinema. That is, as a tool in order to understand the world we live in. And in many ways, what I'm going to show you deals, of course, with architectural forms, but also with the city, with certain perceptions, with certain activities, because it's very clear that there is no way today that we can talk about architecture without talking about what happens in it. That is, that we can talk about architecture without talking about programs. And in this sense, much of the work that you're going to see tonight is literally trying to raise the question, the fact that perhaps there is no architecture without event, no architecture without action, perhaps no architecture without violence. So I'll perhaps just to place it very quickly in a context, the one of the city. It's very interesting to arrive in Los Angeles because one perhaps touches something which is the exact opposite of the European city of the 15th or 17th century, the city which is heavily guarded against outside invaders, which has a wall, which has gates, in other words, which has boundaries, which has limits. And this notion of the city, which is defined whether in terms of the exterior space, that is, the limits as expressed through the wall and the gate, or through the interior spaces, like the interior spaces of the 18th or 19th century, that is particularly to Nash in London, the Crescent, or then something entirely different, much closer to a 20th century imagery, which is that explosion in a series of individual units, still having a particular structure, a concentric organization, but raising the question that if the first image that I showed you and the second one, the Nash image, are undoubtedly not adequate in turn of the 20th century, city, the whole socio-economic and political and historical circumstances do not allow for this sort of thing anymore. But is it this sort of image that we are concerned with, or is it this sort of image, the familiar archetype of the utopian city of the modern movement? Is it what we have to deal with, or is there another attitude which can be concerned? Recently, certain writers and philosophers have begun to refuse to distinguish the city from its architecture. And if we talk about the architecture of the city, then perhaps one ought to wonder what architecture is. And again, that question of the action, the events, become a key factor. Here, a series of advertisements which I was involved with several years ago. But basically, the point of the slightly ironical statement is rather the one that is underlying the whole notion. You'll see tonight a lot of images from the cinema, because I believe that quite a lot of movie makers, whether in Europe or right here, have explored this sort of relationship. That is what happens when a piece of architecture is under the tension, under the compression, under the conflict of a crowd. And this sort of dialectic between the event and the architecture is something which ultimately is the underlying theme, not only of my work, I would say, but somehow I think one of the key problems that we have to consider today. The image which is here, which I'm not going to explain out of context, but simply to bring, in order perhaps to focus on a leitmotif which comes through the whole work, which is that tripartite notation of the event, the plan, and the movement, as three of the components of architecture that cannot be dissociated from one another, that somehow that we are all dealing with. This hall is very different if it's used for a lecture or if it's used for a softball game. There's another thing that begins to occur, a certain type of choreography of movement that plays with the nature of the architecture itself. And in this respect, that notion of the event of the choreography, the notion of perhaps these action, it's interesting if you think of the modern movement and or even starts with the Victorian era, the classification of functions, the classification of activities, always discusses useful function. Never the useless one, never the violent one, never the ones that deal with human passion. And just as I said that architecture is not only a knowledge of form, but a form of knowledge, architecture, just as literature, ought to deal perhaps with those passions, with love and with death. Second issue, second theme, each of those titles do correspond to a theme that will be recurring through the work, is the one of space, because after all, the logic of events is not necessarily the same as the logic of space. And whether it is the space without center of Piranesi and its obsessive development, or the space of Dr. Caligari. Can we have it first in focus? I'm not sure if the pictures can, or the space of the style of Van Doesburg, Rietveld. All these particular approaches tend to deal with an obsessive exploration of an internal logic. Malevich and Lissitzky, once again, one of the discoveries of the 20th century is that certain activities, certain disciplines have a relative autonomy, the autonomy of language, the autonomy of form, that can be manipulated, in its own right without any reference to anything outside itself. In this respect, this second aspect, space, is one that I want to focus on. The third one, movement, is a very simple one. We all know the way places can be reinforced or transgressed or violated through the movement that takes place in them. And probably the question that is raised, and we shall see that in a moment, is that we cannot simply proceed with the good intention of talking about movement in architecture, but we have also to find ways to map that movement, to talk about its notation. Movement in 3 dimensions, the acrobat, we see all those things. Another aspect that I want, almost these themes are like preliminary footnotes about the work. The aspect of disjunction is one which I think is extremely important today, one that we simply cannot avoid. The current phenomena of office blocks disguised as Doric temples, or of social housing disguised as New Little Versailles, is a phenomena that is apparently unavoidable. This disjunction between the formal vocabulary and the lack of an ability to find a formal vocabulary that contains its own symbolism, one that corresponds to the activities that take place in it, seems to be very much part of the period we live in. And this disjunction between form and use is to be found just in a trite example of the ritualistic mafia murder in a bar saloon, or perhaps even in ways to build. The famous building on Madison Avenue being built now, where a stone is actually hung like pictures on a wall, completely changing and literally the very nature of the materiality. But that disjunction is something that I would say is not something that we should feel sorry about, and say that perhaps we should return to the 18th century humanism, where everything did fit as a perfect glove, if it ever did. But perhaps that situation, which is the condition of modern man, that total disjunction between man and his product, the architect and his house, the logical vocabulary that he can derive by playing the obsessive manipulation of beams, slabs, columns, and so on, and the logic of that human being. And perhaps that disjunction is again this one. But somehow, the whole point, my whole argument, is that if there is any meaning which is to be derived from a piece of architecture, it's one which cannot avoid taking into consideration the activities, the action, in this particular case, most in a metaphoric manner, the murder case. So let me now perhaps go through a piece of work, the transcripts, which were aimed as a means of exploring those particular issues. And the transcripts are very much like a novel. It's made of 4 episodes, each with a title: the park, the street, the tower, the block. And each tried to explore a series of issues, some which have to do with that relationship between form, use, and movement, some which simply have to deal with issues of representation, mainly of architectural representation, the relationship, let's say, between plan, section, perspective, axonometry. But perhaps without going too much in detail on the first episode, the park, let me run through it. Without too many words, the park is simply the story of the murder in the park, which is, of course, a particular archetype of a city, in this case, Central Park in New York City, and a series of events take place. The tripartite notation again, the photograph generally, not always, dealing with the notion of event, the plan, the movement notation. Quiet part, the runner, jogger, fight. Search for clues. Thank you. As you can see, there are a series of relations between the movements that occur in the action and the architecture itself. In the first part, those relations have proceed by analogy. It becomes far more specific when we get towards the third episode, the tower, and extremely specific when we get to the fourth episode, the block. But this type of analogy, the movement of a crowd, the compression of a series of formal works performed upon the layout of Central Park, the compression of the blocks against the park itself, is very much that first level of exploration, the contemplation. Now, you've seen that tripartite notation, and that problem of notation, especially of movement notation, is one which is extremely complex to deal with, because the architectural, let's say, architectural notation, architectural representation, is a rather sophisticated thing. Perspective, plan, section, axonometrics are rather precise tools that allow us to discuss a whole series of architectural issues in a very, very clever manner. The relationship between geometry and space and all that can be certainly worked out through these particular means of projection. At the same time, the notion of movement is one that is normally neglected and which has somehow to be looked upon in other disciplines of dance, of course, or although there are some, let's say, precedents. In this particular case, Moholy-Nagy at Bauhaus, people like Schlemmer and Moholy-Nagy were interested in the notion of movement in space and were devising, especially in the context of the theater, a series of manners of talking about certain articulation of spaces, certain lighting effects, as well as certain movements, certain choreographies. A more recent example, Lava notation, or much older examples, in this particular case, 17th century dances. And, or, in a very contemporary manner, the quite actually, I think it's not in an ironic, as an ironic gesture that I have with the football notation. Most football notation, in terms of notation, is extremely sophisticated, and somehow this relationship between the players and the spaces that they build is perhaps one of the quite interesting starting points, perhaps, of the study, due to the fact that the football field is, after all, quite precisely determining a series of fields, of limits, yards, and or other type of movements, one of the skater or whatever. All these things, again, are here simply perhaps to build up a repository of precedents, in this particular case, military maneuvers, in this Al-Alamein, Rommel versus Montgomery, or pageants, quite extraordinary movement of crowds that begin to determine spaces, literally through the movement of the bodies. And perhaps one example, which was very influential on the work at one moment, is that remarkable series of that score, almost like a musical score, which is taken from a quite glorious episode of the cinema, that's Eisenstein and the film Alexander Nevsky. And in this particular case, there is a very interesting relation which is being suggested, which is the relation between the picture frame, the music notation, the nature of the composition is related to the movement of the camera and the movement on the picture. And this attempt somehow tried to carry it further in the context of a piece of architecture, which was a very long drawing, a 42nd Street, but a 32-feet long drawing, which is a section from the Hudson to the East River, and literally attempting that relation between the action, the space, and the movement. We're going to see it a little closer, and perhaps just a reminder of the quite extraordinary scene that 42nd Street suggests. If you think the number, for those who are familiar with New York, the number of different worlds that you can cross as you go through from, let's say, from the East River. You start with the United Nations, then the Ford Foundation, then the Chrysler Building, then Madison Avenue, then the Grand Central, then you arrive at Fifth Avenue in the Public Library, then Bryant Park with all the drug addicts, then you enter the movie world, and then the porno movie world, and all the TV shows, then you get to the cheap brothel, then it becomes industrial land, and then it becomes the decaying West Side Highway, which was just pulled down, and the docks. And within a few blocks, you pass a whole series of worlds, and that notion of the passing from one world to another was very much the theme of that particular piece of work. That is the crossing from one border to the next, and each border was not to be seen as a fence, as a gate, but as a real space. And the scenario, because there is always a scenario, as a means of perhaps discussing in a metaphorical manner that notion of the event, was the following one. Border crossing, derelict pier and luxury hotel, junkies and detectives, cheap whorehouses and gleaming skyscrapers had all been part of his world. So when he got out of jail, he thought he would pass safely from one to the next. But then he met her. To him, she was an enigma, bold, shy, wanton, and childlike in turn. From the moment he saw her, he was a man possessed by a woman who was beautiful to look at, but neither about the street. These blurbs are, yes, written by me, but following the famous model of the cheap detective novel and the blurb at the end of it. But after all, it's not by accident that it happened in this particular manner. It's simply that obviously we're still architects, and we're not going to try to organize the everyday life of the people who live in our buildings. You know the example of the utopian socialist Fourier, who was, when he was designing his phalanx there, was determining every minute of the life of his inmates, from getting up at 7 o'clock, coffee at 7, brushing your teeth at 7, and giving a room for every activity and a path for every movement. And so it's not about that. The work really tries to understand the nature of that relationship rather than forcing it. And in each of the episodes that I'm going to show you tonight, the park, you see the murder in the park, or this particular love story, these are literally formula plots. They are the equivalent of B-movies. Ultimately, it's not the plot that counts, but the treatment. And so once again, here we have the tripartite notation, this time changed in a certain manner. The action at the top, the plan, in this case, the plan has been replaced by a section, and the movements which take place in horizontal section, the plan itself. Perhaps I could say a quick word, because you're going to see as we go along, that the first episode, the one which dealt with the park, was mainly drawn in the form of plans, every architectural notation. The second one takes its emphasis on section. The third one that is the tower, on the axonometric, and the last one on the perspective. That rather plodding approach was one that I considered necessary due to the very fact that we all know that as you work through a building, that the mode of representation, the mode of notation, always have a particular effect on the formal vocabulary that you use, and somehow it's only by means of cross sort of control back and forth between plan and section that you get a comprehensive image. But perhaps the nature, the specificity of each of those is what interests me. Another problem that you're going to see in this is the one which, interestingly enough, I would say is one of the few issues which I still consider quite exciting and not yet fully resolved, which is the notion of double image, the notion of superposition, one which is considerably used in the 20th century in the cinema and painting, but that architects have always used in a rather metaphorical manner, or in the most, how can I say, literal manner of overlay of planes. In this particular case, you are going to see that in that sequence of 42nd Street, very many of the spaces tend to carry the memory of the space that was before them. So here, imagine that walk from 42nd, from the Hudson back to East River, and somehow each of those spaces carry the memory of the previous one as you're walking along, and the walk itself start to perform or start to effect certain distortion in the spaces, in the actual spaces of the buildings of that part of the street. In other words, the notation, this you take here, you recognize certain elements from the Chrysler building, that's the plan of the Chrysler building, but distorted. Plans of the Daily News building, with again certain distortion that come from, from that movement pattern. Again, I'll be slightly more specific when we go further about the nature of those devices, the notion of device, what it means to break away, to superpose, or to distort. So here, just a close-up, perhaps, as a reminder of the technique which is used. Logic. Another theme, which is the one that deals with an interesting problem that those of us who draw and write have certainly noticed that the argument is not carried in the same manner. Those of us who build and draw know that the logic of a drawing is not quite the same as the logic of a building. And in this respect, just as you go from episode to episode, and one is done entirely in plan, and another one entirely in section, and so on, the idea of the power of the line as you draw along, the distance between each line and the spaces that are in between, have a curious effect on the development of the thought. We see how later on the same thing happens with words. Again, words have a logic of its own, and the obsessive notion of a concept as organized through the word leads to something else. Okay, now another theme, I'll just throw those themes on. Reciprocity. The relationship between movement and spaces is one which is quite interesting insofar as it's always to be asked whether the movement precedes the space or the space precedes the movement. And in this respect, the situation of, can we have the next stream? think, for example, of the Guggenheim Museum, which ramp may be just as seen as the solidification of a movement, as well as the constraints that a solid, the ramp, puts on the person who walks through it. When they came with ice cream. Wait, I think there is something wrong. We're not in sequence, right? I think you've got the wrong tray. Still wrong. Excuse me. Had that notion of the reciprocity, that is the relation in this particular case between movement and spaces. I was talking about a particular example, the Guggenheim Museum, where there is a reciprocal relation between the movement and the space, whereby it is difficult to know which one precedes the other, whereas the ramp is nothing but a solidification of a preceding movement, that the idea of movement is solid through a ramp, or whether, on the contrary, the idea of the ramp precedes the one of movement and shapes the movement. A very interesting building, one which is perhaps one of the most complex and perhaps underrated building of that period, which is the Carpenter Center in Boston of Le Corbusier, which unfortunately the building itself perhaps doesn't correspond to the rather complex notion that the architect is trying to explore, which is exactly that conflict between a particular movement, that ramp, that solidification of the movement, and the logic of a building. The two logics conflict. The logic of the movement and the logic of the building are not the same, and they try to play with one another. And the sort of dialectic that occur between the two is somehow symptomatic, perhaps, of one of the tasks of architecture today. And in this respect, this notion of the conflict between the space and the movement itself that you find in a series of, let's say, movie scenes, in this particular case, the rather well-known set of the steps of Odessa, whereby the movement of the different protagonists, the relationship to the steps, is a remarkable play on order and disorder, on discipline and chaos, and in this respect, showing that somehow the notion of movement becomes a means of activating a particular space. The sequence of Potemkin, the Odessa step sequence, lead me to the notion of sequence itself. If we talk about movement, it's quite clear that we have to deal with that notion of frame by frame moving from one space to another. Now, the notion of sequence is one thing in which, in architecture, is a rather well-known phenomena, a rather well-explored one until somehow 1910, where suddenly the notion of the movement itself still exists, the idea of time, which is obsessively developed during the early part of the 20th century, but the idea of sequence itself in spatial terms, in the way the Beaux-Arts movement or the type of sequence that we saw rarely in this particular case with Melnikov as a series of frames, or perhaps more commonly the case of the lodges, where the movement sequence does correspond to a series of events where somehow each of the gates that correspond to a particular space behind that case also correspond to an exam, to a particular set of events, of activities which relate themselves to the space in which it takes place. And somehow that notion of the relationship between the sequence and the series of the sequence of spaces and the sequence of events is the theme of the third episode, which is the one of the tower, whereby the notion of the sequence of spaces is made literal, almost like a sequence of a film, but this time in a vertical manner, insofar as perhaps the idea of the vertical sequence of spaces in architecture has been far less explored than the horizontal one. And somehow, because we are still in New York City, we're still dealing with certain archetypes after the street, and the park, the tower. Again, the blurb in this particular case, I'll read it to you again. The fall, first it was just a battered child, then a row of cells, then a whole tower. The wave of movement spread, selective and sudden, threatening to engulf the whole city in a wave of chaos and horror, unless. But what could she do now that the elevator ride had turned into a chilling contact with violent death? The tower. Now the tower is an exploration of that relationship between the movement and the space. And perhaps I'll take you a little slower through this one in a rather pedantic or didactic manner. First, in a horizontal way, that is, the tower is organized as a series of cells. Those cells are confronted throughout the whole piece of work through a movement, which you can see in the frame, which is the one in the middle. And this movement is superimposed to the series of spaces. Those spaces in this particular case are basic cells. The movement simply alters the configuration of those cells. In the second case, the spaces, as you can see at the top, are a cylindrical, diamond-shaped, square-shaped, blob-shaped, or triangular-shaped space. Movement is superimposed in it almost in the same manner as Duchamp drops a piece of string and places, solidifies it into a piece of work. In this particular case, the movement is literally solidified against the series of spaces, resulting in a new configuration. Another version of that, this one slightly more perverse, whereby the space itself, that is the beginning, as you can see at the top, is a corridor, in other words, a movement already, this time superimposed to a random movement and providing me with another configuration. Then the procedure which was taken was, again, to make a parallel with the cinema, zooming in, taking one part of it and looking at it as a form of way, as a manner to determine the plan of each of those courtyards. As you remember, the tower is made of a series of courtyards on top of one another, which here take a particular configuration, which is the result of the movement patterns on the horizontal plane, but this time projected on the vertical one, and then brought against a particular movement, the movement of the fall, resulting in that strange opposition between the red marking, which deals with the movement, and the gray and black marking, which deals with the spaces themselves. Device. It's very clear that if we try to work with the idea of form as something which is neutral, just as you have seen at the beginning when we were talking about the idea of disjunction, or when we were talking about the idea of space, the space of Piranesi, the space of Lissitzky, or the space of Rietveld, these are manipulations which have their internal logic. They also proceed through the use of a series of devices. And that notion of device, which is after all a formal and logical procedure, is something that I have tried to look at in other disciplines. In this particular case, the device of superposition in film here by Ziegler-Vertov, and the break of scale, another Ziegler-Vertov example, which is the symmetry which comes from the folding, which is a device which I use in particular, its particular drawings of the first series of the park. The device of repetition, one which is quite familiar to us architects. There it is. The device of distortion, alto here. Or the device of scale break, which has again certain architectural parallels. And then you can have slightly more perverse one with metaphorical or symbolic content, far more difficult to use. So let me now get to the fourth and last episode, the block. Again, a sequence which is very similar to the previous one, but this time horizontal. 5 courtyards that follow one another. Another scenario, another formula plot. Here is the block with its loose yards and its loosely springs, where well-dressed soldiers get rich on acrobatic habits, where fat football players send you up for knowing the wrong kind of strong-arm dancers, where everything you want to belong to somebody else, and the only way to get it is legal, moral, deadly, the block. Manhattan blocks, but that block is not quite like a Manhattan block after all. It's far more like a German Berlin block. I don't know if you're familiar with those quite remarkable Berlin blocks, which are literally a series of frames, a series of courtyards which follow one another. And each of these courtyards is notable for particular activities. Courtyard in a discipline house in Amsterdam, or perhaps the association with the theater, which is the facade, the interior facade of the courtyard, because after all, the activity that takes place in the courtyard is one thing. The vocabulary of the facades that enclose the courtyard is quite often another thing. Just as in the theater, you may have a relationship between the stage set and the play, but you may very well play one against the other. Nevertheless, that notion of the stage set was one that I used as a means to inform the organization of the 5 courtyards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this sort of facade, which, as you can see, is a play on the notion of perspective. And I'll say a few words about that, the meaning of perhaps of perspective today, with changing meaning, close up of this again as the starting matrix, if you want, of that last episode of the block. Again, some of the images of those precedents, formal manipulation of the background, in this case, the stage set, or the foreground, which becomes the pageant, or the activities, the plays that take place. Now, if we're talking about this matrix, and about a series of spaces which are like those facades. Take the top layer, correspond to the facade. The medium layer correspond to the spaces of those four courtyards, the axonometric views from about 90 degrees axonometric. In this particular case, the activity that I decided to use was the one of the football player. Wait, I think there is here a mix in the style. Just excuse me. Nevertheless, let me perhaps go back to that notion of the activity. When early on I attacked that strange situation that occurs today, when buildings which are built for exactly the same purposes have entirely different appearances and then are used for particular architectural polemics. Take, for example, again, two skyscrapers on Madison Avenue, quite well known, one by a notable modernist, Edvard, the other one by Johnson, the AT&T building. Those two buildings were built practically at the same period. They came out at the same time, same steel structure, same elevator core, same office use, same secretary, same quarters. 2 years later, two very different buildings occurred, both curtain wall buildings, by the way, except one of them, the curtain wall, is made of flat marble slab, and the other one of pseudo stone. In both cases, one to be seen as a representative of a particular architectural ideology, the other one as a representative of an architectural ideology which is entirely opposed. Now, this particular symptom, which doesn't only happen there, you find it happening all over the world. The same thing happened in Europe or in France or in England, where apartment plans of buildings which are undoubtedly different in terms of their facade are exactly similar due to the particular norms of the regulation of those particular housing codes. Now, that notion of discussing architecture purely in terms of its formal expression is something that somehow I tried in a very obsessive manner. That is, if I take the notion of program, it's not simply saying now we're going to have a type of housing which is for special type of people, you know, who have particular habits or who have special lifestyles. On the contrary, I think the attempt has to do with saying what sort of absolute activities, what sort of extremes are we dealing with. And in this particular case, the extremes of programs have to do with the acrobat, the skater. I'm sorry, I'm moving a bit from the light because I think the light is very, very blinding, and please excuse me with the tapes. The five movements, the five notations, the one of the acrobat, the one of the skater, the one of the dancer, which ultimately is the same as the one of the fighter, the one of the military movement, and simply for the sake of a particular kind of notation, or the one of the footballers, were somehow the five plots that were placed on those five stages, that is the five courtyards of the block, were the five spaces, the five grounds on which the action would unfold. And somehow, the notation that you're going to see in the drawings is literally playing that relationship between one particular action, here the one of the acrobat, the one of the skater, the one of the military personnel, and the one of the football players. The matrix which is used through the piece, is a matrix which is conceived in such a manner that the different parts are interchangeable. That is, it's quite obvious that, as we shall see, that you can place the skater underneath here so that the skater is dancing on the tightrope. And this beginning of interchangeability is one of the, let's say, key factors of that change relationship just between, again, the form and its use. Now let me say a few words about the photographs that are used as the starting point. We go back to the matrix at the top. When I showed you those series of backgrounds from the theater, those facades that somehow, those stage sets, which had their own internal logic. What was interesting was that notion of the trompe-l'œil perspective, the notion of perspective. And it seems to me that if on one hand, we may say that there is one particular approach to architecture that deals with reality, that takes as its starting point reality, and by this I mean the opposite of a Platonic cube, a Platonic solid, a sphere. That reality is not quite the reality we know we touch. If we think that most of the buildings that we know in architecture, the famous example that we have taught, that we discuss through the tools of history or the tools of criticism, are generally now communicated through the device of photography. And photography somehow is that strange 20th century perspective. Something that can be edited, can be altered. Here, the same photographs that we've just seen in color, this time through a grainy film, Xerox 11 times. The manipulation of that particular image removes it from its original perception of someone standing at a particular place and through the device of the vanishing point and on this particular thing. And what was attempted here was to say that if there was one logic here in terms of the movement, a logic in terms of the action, the sequence of events, and a logic in terms of the spaces, that logic of the spaces could exactly follow the same system as the movement. Therefore, if I have a stage, I can start to solidify this stage with those series of images that we've seen earlier on. In the same way, I have a movement notation, which is here the football notation, which is slowly solidified, or at the very end, in the last frame, made into a hole into the ground, not unlike that famous statement by Oskar Schlemmer at the Bauhaus, saying that the dancer was, after all, moving his body like in a piece of clay, as if space was a soft and pliable substance. And that relationship between the movements themselves, here the color version of it, between the movements and their solidification, starting to build up an architectural reality as a solidification of movement, is one of the themes. The other theme is the solidification of that matrix of space, but through the intermediary of the photographic image, which is then superimposed to the set of frames. The frame exists always, the black frame there, as a means of order against which any type of distortion, superposition, or explosion can take place. Close up again. I think the notion is clear now. Other devices which were used in those series of drawings, in this particular case the device of distortion, the skater, the movement of the skater, and the distortion which is performed upon the formal vocabulary of that particular block. Or in this particular case, perhaps a rather important transformation, whereby the movement of the soldiers, the reenactment of a famous battle, changes at the end, whereby the soldiers are replaced by the footballers, so that the footballer skates on the battlefield. That disjunction, that switch between one particular activity, one particular form, and one particular meaning is one of the type of manipulation that the 20th century disjunction between man and his language, man and his object and event allows us. And so in this respect, I do think that the skater or the footballer skates on the battlefield is more than a poetic image, but very much, can we have the last string, very much a condition which is characteristic of what we saw early on with the switch between, let's say, the Gothic church and the movement. Always in the realm of devices, ordering devices on that last part, the one of grid, the one of by the way, we all know that grids are the safest means to control disorder, and somehow this being superimposed on a particular manipulation, which in this particular case was again playing the role of a particular action, but being played against another movement. In this case, the solidification of the movement of the skater, so that the acrobat skates on whatever ground, or dances on whatever ground, or acts as a soldier on that ground. Here, the full drawing itself of the solidification of the movement of the skater, of the acrobat, sorry, the solidification of the skater, the solidification of the dancer, the solidification of the soldiers, and of the football players. All this time performed by the same actor who is the acrobat. The series of the block is made of 15 drawings, which somehow all explore one of those devices, in this particular case, cut up and disjunction, and perhaps rather than going through each of those exploration, I'd go directly to the last part, or the last point, which, for failure to find a better word, I use as pleasure, which has to do perhaps with that confrontation between the movement and the architecture, or the solidification of it. This image taken from Metropolis of Fritz Lang, whereby the role of the figure, the human figure, becomes a determinant in terms of architectural form. It's quite interesting that today, that within the art world, since that has been used as a starting point to the series, a return to figuration can be witnessed. That a very strong attack against abstraction and minimalism can be seen, and the use of allegory, the use of figurative painting, a number of shows which are called the anxious figure, or the running silhouette, or that tend to play with a return to the human figure, is something that architects have explored in the past. In this particular case, that quite extraordinary image drawing by Melnikov for a large ministry building, which has been, I believe, incorrectly interpreted by most architectural historians as a means of pleasing the particular power at the time that is trying to represent certain socialist ideals of the Stalinist religion. No, I think that in reality something funny, that sort of obsessive leitmotif of our century. The other examples of those play between a formal vocabulary of one sort and another I find quite interesting, and here in the case of the Follies, which It's interesting, this slide should have come before the follies, but somehow simply, perhaps that's again a case of the reenactment of one of the revolutionary ceremonies in Leningrad in 1920 and 1922, whereby in particular formal vocabulary is superimposed to another, a certain abstraction, the logic of geometries is superimposed to a particular reality, all in a rather intrinsic manner. That superimposition is very much part of a series of work, which I'm quickly going to interject within that, which is the work entitled The Follies, which have been an attempt on my part of trying to explore through ephemeral construction which were done only for short periods, generally on budgets from, call it the National Endowment of the Art or whatever public organization, which were trying to explore certain of these issues, of those relationships between certain objects, certain movements, and certain formal devices. Here, a particular gate, which again plays that notion, or things which were built here in Holland, again with, unfortunately, I'm missing one of the slides, whereby the same configuration is one time in order, another time in disorder. Another series of those deconstructed objects, again called follies for the city of Kassel, whereby a series of elements which are taken from the vocabulary of the city, that is roofs and walls of one of the main buildings there, the town hall, city hall rather, were taken as the starting point of a series of formal manipulation, which were trying literally to explore the notion of deconstruction and reconstruction, deconstruction of an existing object and reconstruction according to other types of configuration through the use of those devices that I've outlined earlier on. And some of those pieces are being built at the moment, literally as that sort of architectural vocabulary. That notion of deconstruction brings me to the last few slides of the transcript, which is at the moment when I start to say that event and object, or space and use, or type and program, whichever you want to say it, are both equal and interchangeable, that the notion of movement can be solidified, then suddenly the temptation of bringing it all together in a sort of collision and confrontation of all the parts becomes extremely tempting, and as a sort of almost an automatic writing of architecture, each of the parts of the preceding episodes were superimposed in the form of one single drawing, and then slowly, again, almost as an operation that one performs on itself, slowly deconstructed, edited out, so that one would arrive to a few very precise selected elements, which then one can begin to consider as possible buildings. And perhaps just for the pleasure of the line, I'll just pass you through a few of the original drawings. Each of the drawings are about 2 feet by 1 feet of this particular series. And it is. I'm asked if I want to answer some questions, which I will, but it's perhaps late, and I think we leave